Hey, what's up, guys? So it is a Wednesday afternoon. I just finished editing videos and working on stuff that's going to be coming in the pipeline, and figured let's just spend some time, hang out, and chat. I got a couple radar detectors here on hand. I got the Redline 360C as well as the Valentine 1 Gen 2. I've got a bunch of other detectors on the shelf, but I've got these two in particular because I want to talk about, I guess, some stuff that we've been seeing lately, and that has to do with maybe some of the new radar detectors that come out that are exciting and awesome and have a lot of cool things to offer, but have some sort of early reliability issues. I mean, we've got like the V1 Gen 2, which is doing great in testing, and it's got the open API and awesome arrows and all this kind of stuff, but we had power off failures. I think about 30% of the initial ones actually would die on people. We're still seeing a couple of detectors with like these front panels, the plastic piece actually popping off the detector. The power off thing seems to be mostly resolved at this point, thank goodness, which is actually why I put it back on my website kind of tentatively as a recommended detector. We're still seeing a couple detectors with issues, but for the most part, it looks like this detector is now pretty solid again. I'm hopeful that things are actually working properly now. It's just weird to see that, I guess, especially out of a company like Valentine, where they're kind of known for the rock solid reliability, but a lot of that I think just comes from the fact that they've had one detector, the Gen 1, for like 30 years or something. But then they come out with a new version and it's got some issues. Then we've got Escort coming out with the Redline 360C, which has a ton of things to offer. But yeah, there were some issues with the ramp up, the arrows, like you guys saw in the videos. There's some things that I didn't mention in the videos, kind of like how when you get an alert, it takes a second for the arrows to pop up. They're not instantaneous, which is kind of funny when they're like, oh, we have 25 times faster processor with the Blackfin DSP, which is the same thing they use in like the Uniden R7. But the Redline 360C now has a Blackfin DSP chip in there too. But then it's like slow to display alerts. And you're like, well, what's up with that kind of stuff? It's weird. I mean, it's got a lot of good stuff. Don't get me wrong. Like, it seems to be pretty quiet overall. I actually just went to the not the post office, but the mail store, whatever it's called, to go mail back the Redline Original and the Redline EX. And it was interesting. I actually just posted a couple photos of that on social media. If you look on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, there's a couple photos that I just posted there at Vortex Radar. And so I just posted pictures of them up side by side. And then just for kicks, because I was going to mail them back anyway, I figured I'd drive with all three detectors on the windshield. Obviously a bad idea for proper testing, but just to goof around, And it was actually pretty interesting. The Redline falls to a couple Hondas, several of them that the Redline EX and the 360C was filtering out, which was pretty cool to see. I obviously can't tell for sure because running multiple detectors and they could be falsing each other or whatever, but it's kind of cool to see. That is kind of the trend that I'm seeing, is the newer detectors do seem to be doing a better job of filtering out a lot of these false alerts. And then the Redline 360C was actually staying quiet at one point when the other two Redlines, the original and the EX, were falsing to just some shopping center door openers nearby. And the 360C was staying silent to them. And I'm like, well, that's cool. I'm happy to see a detector that's actually quiet and doesn't have a ton of false alerts. But then if you've got some of the issues with the arrows and the ramp up and that kind of stuff, it's like, dude, you got to get the fundamentals right. And that way we can be like, okay, the basics are in place, and then we can enjoy all the newer filtering and the longer range and that kind of stuff, But you got to do the basics right. So it's just weird to see, like, okay, the V1, which is known for reliability, is having issues with reliability now. The Redline 360C, okay, Escort is known for some of their ridiculous marketing, like the Escort Passport Max has the longest range of any radar detector on all frequencies against all radar guns when you're running production final firmware or whatever. And we're like, it never actually showed that. And then the stuff with the Redline EX and the Red Max 360C and now the Redline 360C, there's issues with the marketing, but like, if we just look at how good of a detector it is once you buy it and stick it on your windshield, like, I don't know. I mean, is it too much to expect one of these things to be reliable? Like, you put it on your windshield and it just has to work well. Like, I don't know. It kind of makes me wonder about Thea too. Like, I know there's a lot of hype and excitement about Thea, and yeah, I had a chance to see a lot of the stuff in action at SEMA, and they're continuing to share a lot of cool information. But we're like, well, this is Redenso's first radar detector that they're building themselves. Hopefully history doesn't repeat themselves. I hope that they do a good job of like testing and making sure that the basics are working? Are you actually getting long range? Do you have any false alerts, blind spot falses? Do the arrows work properly? Is it reliable? All this kind of stuff. Like, I hope they nail the basics, and I hope they also nail the blind spot filtering and the range and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I was actually having an interesting discussion about this with Escort recently. We were talking about beta testing and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, what's the best way to do this? So, I mean, for their sake, I'm sure it sucks for Escort to like spend a lot of time working on a new radar detector and launch it, and all of a sudden, got all these issues, right? Like, that sucks for them, and I kind of feel bad for them. But like, would it make sense to have maybe some more people actually testing the detector beforehand to try it out? I mean, I think actually the responsibility of the radar detector company to develop and use the product and test it to make sure everything works properly. It's not up to beta testers, volunteers like myself, essentially, or other enthusiasts on the forum to test. But if that's what it takes to get reliable stuff, maybe that's what it takes. I don't know. Uniden did some of that stuff when they released the R3 and the R7. Those are super popular detectors too. And I think a big part of that is, you ever heard that expression, like, you never get a second chance at a first impression? I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like, Uniden, when they released the R3, they worked with a couple of us to actually give us a chance to test the detector, to try out different beta firmwares, that kind of stuff. And like, okay, we'll run it. We'll see. Can it actually beat the original Escort Redline? That was actually a big deal because the Redline was for many years like the king. It was the benchmark for long distance performance. And all of a sudden the R3 came out and it actually could deliver on Uniden's promises of like longer range. Well, I don't know if they promised better than the Redline performance, but it could actually do that. Had better BSM filtering, had GPS. I mean, it had like pretty much everything, not every single feature, but pretty much better than the original Redline for less money. And you're like, well, dude, that's an obvious no-brainer. And it was great. And then the R7 comes out with arrows, and some of the stuff hasn't been delivered on, like the auto GPS lockouts, of course, with lawsuits and stuff, but great performance, pretty good BSM filtering, manual GPS lockouts for not a ton of money. That's still a really promising thing too. And that has had some kind of growing pains. I know the Max 360C had some growing pains. So I don't know. It's just, I want to see a detector that's released out of the gate and is awesome. And whether that's Escort or Uniden or Valentine or Redenso or Stinger or K40, or I don't care what brand it is. I want to see like awesome stuff that gets released that's good, that has good performance and good filtering and good reliability. Like, when we're testing detectors, the big things are, what kind of range does it get? How good is the BSM filtering? Does it have GPS built in? A lot of that kind of stuff. But I'm noticing lately, a lot of the stuff we need to look at is like, okay, is it reliable? Does it work properly? Can you stick it on your windshield and it just consistently, reliably detects radar and lets you know when something is going on? Do you have speaker failures? Do you have display failures? Do you have power failures? Do you have lockup issues? Do you have the detectors resetting themselves and disabling settings on their own? Like, do you have any issues in the detector that's going to prevent it from doing its job? And I guess that's not stuff that you're going to see on a spec sheet. When you go look on a company's website, or you go look on Amazon, and they're like, we have great range, we have GPS, we are immune to the VG2 or whatever kind of stuff they put on there. It's like, great, but is it reliable? And I guess you don't necessarily know that with the new detector, and maybe as early adopters, that's just kind of stuff that we're going to be experiencing, So I don't know. I mean, you get a new cell phone and there's going to be updates for it. I mean, Apple had their stuff with bend gate or the antenna issues, and various Android companies, Samsung and whoever, like, they've had issues that they've had to work on too. So it's not like this is just a radar detector thing, but I don't know. I mean, is it too much to ask where like the basics are taken care of, to where the detectors are reliable? Maybe that's just part of trying to push the envelope and get something that has amazing range and filtering and features and all that kind of stuff, but it's a little bit questionable, versus maybe something that's a little bit more boring and simple, but reliable. So hopefully, I guess, we can start to move forward to where we have good stuff with awesome feature sets and they're reliable. Yeah, Chris, I'm sorry, we shouldn't lower our standards for these companies. I work in IT for Apple, Microsoft. I hold them to the highest standard. The software and the hardware needs to work well. I agree right out of the gate. Yeah, the stuff needs to work well. And I don't want to think that that's idealistic, to think that something should work well out of the gate. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying beta testers like myself are the answer. I'm not saying that. It could be part of the equation for sure. I know some companies are up for beta testing. Some companies are against it. I've had different experiences with different companies. I don't know what the right answer is, but whatever it ultimately takes to just be awesome. Like, I just want an awesome radar detector. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, you guys are a lot of times asking, what's the best radar detector? Vortex, what do you use? And I'm like, there's no detector that checks every box, that gives me everything I want. Sometimes I need something with longer range. Sometimes I need something with fewer false alerts. Sometimes I want whatever, so I'm constantly switching detectors based on what I need. Maybe a fully functioning, properly functioning Redline 360C could do that. I don't know. I hopefully want a good detector. Maybe we're going to have to wait for Thea. That's, I think, going to be an interesting thing. I know a lot of you guys have been saying maybe the Redline 360C was rushed to market to try to get ahead of Thea. We're seeing Escort actually copy a lot of Redenso's marketing, saying what Thea is saying. Thea, we know they're supposed to come out sometime this year, and maybe that's what Escort did. I don't know. But I think Thea is going to be an interesting one. Maybe that will be the ultimate detector with great range and no BSM falses and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it'll have some issues too, just like the V1 and the Redline 360C have at launch. I don't know. I mean, we've got we can learn as much as we can do. We can speculate, we can talk to the manufacturers, but ultimately what we need to see is like, we test the detector, we use it, and we start to see what it's like. And even if a couple beta testers start to test it, then as you guys are able to start using it, you guys may wind up finding issues that the manufacturers didn't find or beta testers didn't find. And then it gets out into the public, starts using it, everyday consumers, and we're like, okay, there's an issue. And then I think a big question is like, how do companies handle repairs and fixes and firmware updates? That's also a big question. Firmware updates and customer service are two big things that are also really important that also aren't really covered in some reviews, maybe even that I do. I try to cover that sometimes, but I don't always, or even initial impressions. Or if you just look on a website for, I want to buy a radar detector, they're not going to say like, our customer service is good in these areas, but it's lacking in those areas, So I don't know. It's just, I really, really want awesome radar detectors. I don't care what brand it is. I don't care what brand it is. I just want an awesome detector that's works well, that has great reliability, great performance, great false alert filtering, great customer service, that you guys are happy with, that I'm happy with, that manufacturers are happy with. That's what I want. And if Valentine wants to make it, awesome. If Escort does it, excellent. If Redenso does it, great. If Stinger does it, cool. If Uniden does it, cool. I don't care. It's just somebody make a good detector that's awesome across the board. So I'll keep testing them. I'll keep doing my thing. I'll keep listening to you guys. I obviously can't test everything. You guys are asking about MRCD and stuff. I don't have MRCD here. I don't have MRCT. I don't have GATSO. I don't have Redflex. I'm dependent on a lot of you guys who have them. Redflex in Arizona, Multiradar in Chicago or New York or Edmonton or Calgary. I'm dependent on you guys for that kind of testing. Currently, the gold standard is the Redenso Pro M. Hopefully, Thea should be better. We'll see. So, I mean, yeah, we're just trying to like all work together here to test, to learn, to see what we can find, and then just get all the information available for you guys, whether it's here on YouTube, if it's on forums, if it's on my website, whatever. It's just, let's all get the best quality information that we can and share it with you guys. Let's work together so that we can all learn and be informed and educated. That's the whole point of this channel. I want to learn, and I want you guys to be informed as well. So anyway, that's my Wednesday afternoon rant, I guess. But what about you guys? I guess I could ask, do you think reliability is important? But obviously that is. So maybe I guess a better question is like, what do you guys look for in a radar detector? For me, it's long range performance, good BSM filtering. I like integrated GPS. Obviously, I want good reliability. Good customer service is great too. That's necessary. But like, do you guys have certain features that you need in particular? I'm really curious about that. And I know we all kind of have different needs. We have different priorities. Maybe you need range and you're willing to tolerate more falses, or maybe you just want a super quiet detector and you're like, maybe I'll choose something that's a little less range, but it's super quiet so I can trust it when it goes off, So if we have to make some of those compromises and choices, Let's see, J-Dub, one that works as advertised. Yeah, that's a big question. Even if it's not the greatest thing ever, at least just do what you say you're going to do. That's a big thing. Lana saying consistency. Scott, long range and filtering. Those are the two big things. I think everybody for sure wants long range performance and good false alert filtering. That's actually one of the most common questions I get is, I'm like, oh, you want to, people say Vortex, I want a radar detector. Well, what are you looking for? Well, I want enough range to alert me from a ticket without a ton of false alerts. Like everybody says that. And then we're always like, okay, well, let's dive into things a little bit more detail. It's like, okay, let's talk about arrows. Let's talk about RDD immunity and MRCD and your budget and that kind of stuff. So let's see, good balance of price versus performance. That's an interesting one, Mike. Yeah, I know for not everybody wants to drop $750 on this. Totally get it. Not everybody's going to want to drop whatever it costs for the Rodenso Thea, even if it does everything they advertise. If it can outperform everything on the market and have 0 false alerts, not everybody's going to want to drop whatever it costs for that detector, $800, $900, $1,000. I don't know. And I totally get it. Some people are going to want a $500 detector. Some are going to want a $75 detector. Cool. Thanks, Jag. I appreciate the super chat donation. Thank you. Yeah, so not everybody's going to want that. And yeah, okay, TMG. Not everybody wants to splurge for the ALP. I get that. You can get a TMG. I know since we're on the subject, like it may not perform as well against the ALP against all guns, but it's a budget option, and maybe you want to save some money that way. And if you don't have a lot of Dragon Eye, maybe you run a Valentine and you want the JBV1 integration, the TMG could be an option. You know, you kind of have to like figure out what's the best way to balance all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. That's always a tough issue. So it's easy to say, I want the best radar detector, but then you say, okay, well, it's going to be several $1,000s for maybe a custom installed one plus installation. And you're like, okay, maybe I only want to spend $500. I only want to spend $200. Then we kind of start to dial in the conversation for like, what's the best for 200? You know, maybe DFR7 or something. What's the best under 300? R3. What's the best under 400? Best under 500? You know, we can kind of do different price categories like that. Night Owl Tech, you're saying BSMs are the biggest issue I face with the R3, R7, V1 Gen 2. The Whistler CR95 and the CR97 is broken there. Yeah, BSM, that's a big thing. I think everybody hates false alerts. That's probably the biggest reason that we're waiting for Rodenso Thea, is because they should hopefully eliminate the BSM falses. Will they? I don't know. I think it's very likely. But like anything, we haven't learned our lesson here from some of the previous detectors. We got to test and find out for sure, right? So let's see. Checking my texts. Just me. Who do you recommend for installing an ALP in the Seattle area? I'm not actually the greatest person to ask for installers. I actually went down to Portland to have Musicar do my install. I know there's some good installers here in Seattle. I haven't gone to them. I haven't really talked to them. I've talked to a few. There's some good ones I know in Bellevue. There's some in Seattle. There's various different ones that are out there, but I don't really have anybody who I would like go to recommend here in the Seattle area. I went to Portland. It's a little out of the way, but they did an amazing job. So I definitely recommend them. I'm actually probably going to go back to them when Thea comes out to get a hardwire install for the USB-C cable and some stuff that I've been adding in since. Phone mounts, USB cables for expansion, things like that. John Hustle, best budget setup, TMG with the V1 Gen 1. I'd spring for the Gen 2. I do think it's worth it, but on a budget, you could get the Gen. Google them, you'll find them. Let's see. Anyone know when the Pro 3 was first produced? Oh man, years ago. That was actually quite a while ago. That's a good question. I'm not sure when it was produced, but it's been around for a while. Nimesh, radar companies should ask based on what you want and recommend the products that fit that. I know Escort is trying to do a thing on their website where they're like trying to have a product selector kind of, but it's things like, you know, what's your budget? Do you want arrows? Do you want auto lockouts? Do you want RDD immunity? Things like that. And you kind of price it accordingly. Yeah, I guess it's kind of an interesting thing on like how you select a detector. Josh Hustle. I'm sorry, I called you John. My bad. I read that too quickly. Josh. Brand Theron. I never minded the auto door opener false alerts in pre-BSM days. You learned to tune them out with no issue. Yeah. But the BSM falses, either you could ignore them or, yeah, that's the thing. BSMs, once they started becoming an issue, that was a completely different animal. Like, I remember doing tests before that really ramped up, and I'm like, oh, let's turn off the K-band filters. And you could do that sometimes because there weren't all the blind spot falses. And you're like, okay, let's disable TSR and stuff before we had separate K-band BSM filters. And that was a viable thing. You would get better performance, you'd get longer range, you get better reactivity, and it was great to disable TSR for better range, especially in the mountains and stuff, but you can't do that nowadays. And a lot of companies, their K-band filters negatively impact range. So Speed Racer, what do you think of the upcoming Redenso? That should be an interesting thing because they're not going to be reliant on some of the dumb filters like TSR or some of the things, the way they can just look at a signal and tell that it's a Honda or a Red Flex or a Multi-Radar CD or a Custom Falcon HR or whatever gun it is. They should just be able to identify it on the fly like that. So they're not going to rely on some of the performance limiting filters like we see in traditional detectors, auto mode, TSR, K-band segmentation, things like that. So that's, I think, a big thing. We're not going to worry about band segmentation on KA band. And what about out-of-tune guns? No problem. It knows what gun it is, it identifies you or not. I know there's discussions on like the way it actually alerts you. Does it alert you to things that it's not sure about? How is Redenso going to handle training for new radar guns that come out, which is probably going to be a lot like laser jammers. When there's a new laser gun that comes out, they train it to jam that particular gun, and then you get a firmware update for your laser jammer. And I'm sure Redenso will do the same sort of thing. There's a new police radar gun that came out. There's not a lot of guns that come out. It's a pretty rare thing. Something more common is there's a new blind spot false. There's a new Honda got a new manufacturer that creates the new BSM stuff for their stuff. So, okay, we have to train on that. And boom, you have an update to now recognize this system. That is, I think, going to happen more often. But the idea of it missing legitimate police radar, I think, is much less likely. Yeah. Connor, I live in Virginia and run an original Escort 360. I guess the Max 360. I'm looking for an upgrade from that. Yeah, if you're in Virginia, obviously stealth detector can be handy. Maybe the ideal thing would be something custom installed. Even if you have a detector that's not detectable by a Spectre or something, if they see the detector on the windshield, they can still pull you over. They don't confiscate detectors. The fine is like less than $100. It's pretty minimal, but if you want to avoid it, a custom installed detector, a stealth one, would be the best way to go. Something like the Escort Maxi i360 is good. The Redenso RCM is pretty good, but usually only for the front antenna. The rear one could potentially be detected. The Escort is probably the best for that. There's also the Stinger, but I'm not a huge fan of that. For something windshield mounted, maybe Unit and R3, Redenso Pro M, or one of the Redline series detectors. Those are definitely stealth as well. So Vortex, I went on a Mexico trip, and the V1 and R7 don't false as much as the US, same cars. That's a big thing, Abel. Yeah, like in different countries, there's different cars, there's different systems based on, like we have the FCC and they mandate, what frequencies you're allowed to transmit on and all that kind of stuff. There's different cars, there's different systems, there's different technology, there's different laws in different countries. And so you may actually get better results or worse results with American detectors when you go run them in different countries, which is always one of the tough things of using one and around the world. Things vary considerably. I'm actually working before the Redline 360C came out and stuff. I actually did an interview with some guys in Russia. It was like an hour-long interview, and I'm still in the process of editing it. It just kind of, I'm back to editing it, but it's a long one. And we started talking about things in Russia, and things there are incredibly different. It's all K-band, pulsed radar, looking for the signatures of signals. Everything is photo radar. There's no police holding radar guns. The laws are different. The tickets are a lot cheaper than here. Like, things are so different in Russia. Just a lot of the stuff that we have here in the US, they have different detectors with different firmwares that aren't available here at all. I mean, you can run American detectors, but they're not optimized for there. So the American detectors oftentimes suck in Russia, even though they cost more than a lot of the detectors designed for Russia. So it's, yeah, totally. It's one of those things where we can talk about here in the US, but things are definitely different overseas. And yes, Rod, I thought you bought a quiet chair. I did. I specifically tested it, but this thing is starting to squeak on me. The right arm is more squeaky now. I'm going to have to, I keep like tightening the bolts and stuff. Yeah, it's still kind of a squeaky chair. So this is supposed to be my upgraded quiet chair. And yeah, it's starting to squeak on me again. Fangs, best radar detector for Florida. Take a look at any of my radar detector recommendations. Sometimes for certain states, there's certain exceptions. Okay, you have multi-radar or you don't have a lot of K-band and stuff. But for the most part, 8012, what's the best radar detector for Texas? There's not a ton of stuff that if you're in this state or that state, you need to consider. I did do a video on that 2 years ago or something. But just take a look at the radar detector recommendations on my website, and those are going to be pretty good for almost everywhere in the country. Row Unit, thanks for the super chat donation. R7 versus V1 Gen 2 versus Escort Max 360 for Louisiana or Texas. I don't know if there's anything special about Louisiana or Texas. I know you have a lot of wide open terrain, but not everywhere, of course. If you're dealing in places where you've got a lot of long, flat terrain, you don't necessarily need the craziest sensitivity of all time, because most any detector, especially against constant on, can give you plenty of range. When you start getting into curves and hills, trees, if they're using instant on, things like that will really require you to maybe get a more sensitive detector. But if you're in easy situations with long, flat terrains and constant on, you can run a Max 360C or something less sensitive. You're going to be just fine. So a lot of the stuff comes down to like, the Max 360C, do you want the auto lockouts? Do you want the Escort Live functionality? Do you want a more plug-and-play detector? That's where Escort kind of comes into its own. I think for a lot of people, the sweet spot is the Uniden R7. It's like $450 now or so on Amazon. Great performance. Arrows, I mean, manual lockouts, not automatic, but you got your MRCD stuff if you need it. Like, that's kind of a great all-around package for not a ton of money. The Valentine 1 Gen 2 is awesome. I'm a big fan of it, especially if you're an Android person, but also if you're an iPhone person to get your like auto lockouts and stuff in the background. If you're cool with running your phone, which isn't really that big of a deal, the V1 Gen 2 gives you great range, just like the R7, better BSM filtering than the R7. And yeah, as long as you're cool with running your phone and maybe you don't need the frequency display on screen, that's a great choice too. So that's kind of one of the things where it's like there's not one detector that's somehow light years better than all the others. They all kind of have their own pros and cons, and it's not like there's a simple answer. It's if you want the R7 or the V1 or the Max 360, they're all going to work. It comes down to what you want, not so much which one is the only good choice. That doesn't really exist. There's a lot of good choices. So it's a great question. It's a simple question without a simple answer. So that's kind of the way that I would approach those three. You guys are asking, any backlash from Escort regarding the Redline 360C? Have you talked to them? I talked to them as soon as the detector came out. I talked to them before I tested. I talked to them after I tested. I talked to them before I posted the results on the forums or on my website or I did the video. I was very straightforward with them, and I actually went into a lot more detail with them than even what I did in the video as far as things that I think they could do as a company to improve. I actually did that in the video originally, and I wound up cutting it out. But with them, yeah, I mean, I talked to them about all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, hey, we're definitely seeing some issues here. Here's the issues that I'm seeing. I would love for you guys to fix it. Here's some of the issues I've had with previous detectors. Here's some of the good things I've seen. Let's talk about beta testing. Let's talk about all this kind of stuff. So it's not like this was a surprise to them. Yeah, we talk. I mean, I talked to Escort, I talked to Redenso and Uniden and all these companies. So it's not like I talked to Valentine, not as much maybe as some of the other ones, but yeah, I talked to the different companies too. So it's not like it was, I guess, a huge surprise to them. But I didn't talk to every person in the company, of course. I'm sure there were some people who watched the video and that was the first they heard of some of the issues we saw with the Redline 360C. But squeaky chair. But yeah, I mean, I definitely talked to them beforehand. It wasn't like I sprung this on the company before talking to them. So let's see. Radar detectors should be made for multiple states, especially when you travel. A lot of these can work all across the country. There's not like, I mean, okay, maybe some exceptions if you need multi-radar for your specific state. If you need something RDD immune, I can see exceptions made like that. But most of these detectors, I mean, the Escorts now have MRCD, the Unidens do, the Valentines do. No, sorry, the Valentines do not. The Redlines do. So, I mean, you can get a lot of these features from a lot of different detectors. You will start to see things like some companies will do RDD immunity better. Some companies will do arrows better. Some companies will do BSM filtering better. Some will do MRCD better. There are differences that you kind of get in, and that's where you start to pick, which one you want. But yeah, they're made for all states. Depends on how you tweak it. That's actually one of the things I like about JBV1 for the V1 is you can actually have the detector kind of automatically reprogram itself depending on where you're going. So if you go into a state where there's X-band, you can just have the detector automatically enable X-band for you. pretty cool. You can do it manually, obviously, but having a detector do that for you, pretty cool. So the JBV1 does that. I think Stinger tried to do that in Europe. I'm not sure, but they don't do that here in the US. Oh, my baby's out in the backyard playing in like the little thing we built for her. Oh, that's cool. R7 firmware update, GPS. So if you guys haven't seen it, firmware 1.32 kind of leaked for the R3. So there's a new firmware, or not for the R3, sorry, for the R7. There's a new firmware update coming for the R7. A lot of great features, better BSM filtering, MRCD changes, a lot of stuff. Somebody actually got, when they sent their detector for repair, it came back with the newer firmware. Some of the repair guys actually started preloading the firmware, but it wasn't supposed to get released yet. So he's been posting some of the changes and stuff. I don't know when it's going to come out, and there's been some additional changes even beyond that. But yes, there's updates that are coming for the R7 as well. They continue to update it. Updates coming for the R3 and the R1. Yeah, as far as auto lockouts, I don't know when that's going to come out. We're starting to see, I know there's discussion of like one of the patents expired, but did it get extended and can they do it? And are there other patents that are still applicable? I'm not a lawyer. I know there's other people who've been looking at that kind of stuff, but I don't know when auto lockouts are going to come out. That kind of sucks, but hopefully they do come out. We'll see. RJ Flores, 1970. Awesome videos, extremely informative. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much for the super chat donation. Appreciate that. What updates will the R3 have? I do know I'm asking for some additional updates. We'll see. I'm not going to maybe go over every single update when it comes out. Obviously, I'll have everything ready. I kind of spent today going over, here's the updates that we know so far just on my website, just to kind of get that ready for when they are ready for launch. And then I'll do the video once they kind of get a finalized firmware update to release. But it's still working. And we'll see for the next update what it comes out with. America the Blind. How much did you pay for the Bowflex dumbbell? Too much. Like, you can't get them anymore. They're crazy expensive, and shipping is like expensive and stuff too. So this is my home gym in the morning. I wake up at like 5 a.m. to work out. A little bit before my daughter wakes up. She wakes up anywhere between like 5 and 6 now. So I try to get down here to work out beforehand. And then my wife works out after me, and we kind of trade shifts with the baby and stuff. But yeah, this is my quarantine gym and then workspace after we finish that. Let's see. With the long range blips, Rod Johnson is saying, and no arrows. I love the frequency display. I guess you're talking about Redline 360C. Michael, I have the original Redline still going strong. Glad I didn't order the new Redline. Maybe get the R7. Yeah, the Redline, I mean, great detector in terms of performance. Obviously no GPS. Blind spot filtering is not there. It's already immune. No arrows. So if you need good Ka band detection and you turn off X and K, it's a great detector for that, for sure. Nate K, have you thought of co-hosting any videos with some RDF members? Actually, yeah, that would be cool. I'm thinking about that. I haven't really talked to so many people about that. And I know not everybody wants to show their face. You know, there's privacy concerns and that kind of stuff, but I'd be up for it. If anybody in RDF maybe wants to talk, some of the testers, I know, yeah, we did the video with Paul, PY004. That was awesome. He's got a ton of information. That would be a great idea. So if any of you guys in RDF are watching this and you want to chat and we can do a video, totally open to that. Shoot me a PM on the forum and let me know maybe what you want to talk about, topics or something, testing, experiences, whatever. And yeah, that could be cool. What's up, BH Rodeo AZ? Speaking of RDF members, the original Redline was just brute performance. I'd be up for talking on RDF. Yeah, shoot me a PM with ideas on things you'd want to talk about. The Redline, yeah, great performer. It was the king. I literally had it as the intro to my videos for a while because, like, it was awesome. So, Fang66. I subscribed when you took the time to address racism. Yeah, that's been an interesting thing. We've been sitting here studying and reading and learning and, yeah, reading books and watching documentaries, and that's been a thing just to get more informed and learn what we can do to do a better job. So I'm glad a lot of you guys, it went over well too. That's obviously a big topic. It's not what I normally talk about, but that's important. So in your experience, does the Max 360s have plenty of range before you get in range of a ticket? In most situations, yes. There are some situations where no. Even against constant on, I've seen a couple tests where in really tough situations, even the Max 360C would kind of struggle there. So I have seen that. That's one of the biggest area of concerns. But in general, most times it should be fine, especially against constant on. Once you start getting into more like instant on, you get into tougher terrain, that's when you start to run into some of the limits of detectors like that. But if you want a detector with good enough range in most situations, good BSM filtering, auto lockouts, that's kind of where it shines. And that's actually, I think, where this detector would sort of make up for it. It's assuming it's working properly, right? It's got long range. It would have good BSM filtering. It needs properly working arrows. And it's already immune. If you need that, cool. This is kind of supposed to be the answer to the Max 360, or maybe the Max 360C. If you want longer range and you're not like, well, I don't want to drop $650 on a detector, but not have the greatest range available. Okay, spend another $100, you get the great range. Awesome. But Escort needs to maybe fix some of the basics just to get it there. And then once it's there, I think it would be awesome. Like I'm excited about the detector. I just want it to work properly. Please, Escort, do that. And then it'll also be interesting to see when Thea comes out to put those two head to head, and also against the R3 and the V1. That will be an interesting test. So V1 Gen 2, R7, Redline 360C, and Thea. That should be interesting. Rags, what's up, Rags? Good to see you here. You guys have these different usernames here, Explore, Casper, and Rags. I'm like, oh, hey, good to see you. Let's see, and Spinner. What's up, Spinner55? Good to see you, Tom. Yeah. Let's see, where was it? Dan S. Have you ever heard the story about the V1 Gen 1, 3.812, and 1.3 being hot units? Last pre-pop detectors. That was actually before I got into detectors, so I'm not super familiar with those. I know there were some maybe 3.872 people liked or something. I don't know how much of that was firmware dependent. I don't know how much was somebody just got a hot copy of a detector. I don't actually know. It's a great question, though. Maybe somebody else who's been into this longer than I have could give you better information on that. I know some of you guys here who that's exactly the case. What's up, Bo Beer? Speaking of beer. Whiskey break. Konnichiwa. Nor'easter 18. Oh, it's cool. I had no idea all you guys are here. You guys all have, different usernames than you have on RDF. So you guys are chatting, and I'm like, oh, you guys are all my buds from RDF. That's cool. 60 Impala SS. How did you like the Redline 360C parody video? I watched that video like 6 times in a row. I mean, well, throughout the day. I think I watched it like 6 or 7 times. I cracked up every single time. It is hilarious. So, yeah, that video is awesome. If you guys haven't seen some of the parody videos, like, they're actually pretty funny. There's, I think, 2 of them that are out now. I think it was Tony, the guy who made them. And, yeah. Yoshi Stoned. That's a funny name. I have the Max 360 non-Wi-Fi. Is the new Redline keeping the same magnetic mount as the 360? It does. Let's talk about this. So let me grab those detectors, and then I will mention something that I haven't talked about yet. Okay, so the Jones. Cheers. Cheers, brother. So original Redline 360 has the kind of older magnetic mount. The first one was for like the Passport Max 2. It had a quick release button, and then they kind of replaced it with a magnetic mount like this, where it just sort of slides on and off. So this was kind of like the first gen magnetic mount. Then there's the Max 360C, which has their Easy Mag mount, which I think is a lot better. The Redline 360C has the same one as the Max 360C. Now that said, I have seen a picture of the Max 360, the original one with the Easy Mag mount. Somebody sent it to me. I don't know if it's available yet. I don't know if it's a prototype. I don't know if it's going to be coming out to replace this one. But I have seen a version of this detector with the same Easy Mag mount that's available here. That I think would be awesome. I know Escort is trying to standardize stuff. Like they're trying to standardize the look and feel of their detectors. You can see these two look really similar, right? Versus the Max 360 was kind of like an older design. You can tell it's very different. So maybe they're trying to also standardize the mount there. So I don't know if that's going to be coming, but I have seen a version of this that has the Easy Mag mount. But if you have the current version like this, it is different than the Redline 360C. You can see it's a different mount. So WD-40 on the chair. I think it's like the armrest, not just the chair. Rod Johnson, where are the parody videos? Are they in the forums? Yeah, they're on the forums, like Escort videos or something. in the Escort thread. I'm sure if one of you guys wants to go find the link to the thread and just post it here in the live chat, you could do that kind of while we're chatting. That would be awesome. Funny. I've thought about posting it on Facebook or something, but I don't know. It is really funny though if you go watch. There's I think like 2 of them. R7 has the best radar horn right now. It's kind of what's interesting about that one is the R7 doesn't use an LNA, and yet it still performs as like a top tier detector. I can't imagine what would happen if United's like, hey, let's spend the extra money and put an LNA front and rear. That I think would help their RDD immunity issues, but it would also, I think, blow away everything else on the market. The V1 Gen 2 and the Redline 360C that are using LNAs. If Uniden throws an LNA in there, that would be nuts. So that would be a fun thing to see. But I think it still needs like good BSM filtering too. Put some detectors down. The V1 has had Tom saying the best laser detection, but it falses more. Yeah, V1, it's gold standard for laser detection, but a ton of false alerts. I personally disable it. Yeah. Yoshi Stone following up on the Max 360 mount thing. It's hard because the weight of the 360 non-Wi-Fi pulls it down. I need to look into the new mount. I've seen that sometimes. Does it fall off the mount or does the suction cup fail? Because if it's a suction cup failure, make sure the suction cup is clean. These things are really prone to falling off the windshield if they're dirty. So just run it under tap water, which I know sounds weird, but run it under tap water. Just kind of clear off all the dust and little particles and stuff that are on there. Just sort of wash it off and let it air dry. And then clean off your windshield. And then once you stick it to the windshield, it should be pretty solid. So take a look at that if you're having issues. If that's not helping, maybe you'd want to look into upgrading to a blend mount or something. That could be an option too. Hang it under the rearview mirror. Solid, strong mount. No more issues with suction cup failures because I know that's a thing. I do have a link on my website to a discount coupon for that because I know it's like about $100 or so. So if you want to save some cash when you upgrade to a blend mount, just take a look at that coupon. Oversteer. Any updates on the Escort Max 3 after the initial leak? It's, from what I understand, supposed to be officially announced at the end of the month. I'm glad you brought that up. I was just thinking about it earlier. So I don't have any additional information on it yet. I'll hold off on that. We'll wait till it gets announced and then we'll see. So it's honestly not a detector I'm super excited about. It's probably gonna be expensive. I forget how much is it $400 or 500? I forget what the price is now, but it's going to be one of those things where it's a Max 2 in a new case. So just get an R3 for less money, better performance. If you want the better BSM filtering and auto lockouts and cloud stuff, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are, cool. You've got the Max 3. It's a newer version of it. I'm hopeful Escort does something more than just put it in a different case and a new mount. But we'll see. We'll see. You know, we just had a little bit of information from the temporary Best Buy leak, which, yeah. Brand Theron, I've had good lucks with the clean Super Cup style mounts. Yeah, that's right. They used to call these Super Cups. And you kind of had something like this, but a different mount. I forgot about that. Let's see. Yep, talking about. So, okay, this is an interesting point. Nate, you're mentioning the multi-radar coverage. So we generally say, well, I would say the V1 Gen 2 cannot detect multi-radar. That's not entirely true. It can if you disable the K-band filter. And yes, if you switch it into Euro mode, you get a wider range of frequencies to scan on K-band. But the real thing with the V1 Gen 2 is disabling, what is it, K-verifier, they call it. If you do that, you'll get some multi-radar detection, but you'll also get an insane amount of false alerts, and you don't get any sort of unique identification to let you know, hey, this isn't one of the 10,000 false alerts that you've gotten in the past hour. This is now a unique multi-radar alert. You should actually pay attention to that. It's just going to look like another one of the many K-band falses. And so for that reason, even though you can say, yes, it can technically detect the multi-radar if you disable the filters, no, it's not useful in any sort of way. And so that's, I think, an important point of clarification to say, like, can it detect it? Well, yes, but not in a useful way. So for that reason, I say the simple way to answer that is no, the V1 Gen 2 cannot detect multi-radar. In order for them to do it, I think they might, I don't know if they would need a hardware change with the software stuff, but the big thing is they need a unique alert, just like we see with the Redensos and the Escorts and the Unidens, to give you like a unique alert and say, hey, this is multi-radar. This is not just another K-band alert. Pay attention. So yeah. Slick, have we talked about the R7 firmware leak? Yes, we talked about that. I know you can't rewind. Basically, yeah, there's some changes coming for the R7. There's another new firmware update coming. There's been additional changes since. I sent an email to Uniden this morning. I worked on the R7 beta stuff and was like, here's some feedback. Here's some additional changes I think they need. So we'll see kind of as they update it. But yeah, Uniden continues to work on firmware updates for the R7 and the R1 and the R3. I haven't heard as much about like DFR9 stuff. I don't really know what's up with that, but that I think is kind of an overpriced dumb detector, especially when the R3 is getting as cheap as it is, and the DFR7 is still available. DFR9, I mean, it's nice to have a kind of upgraded version of the DFR7, but not with the DFR7 and R3 still available. Sticktron, what's the best detector? I wish there was a simple answer to that. That's actually one of the things that I'm most hopeful for Thea for, to be honest, is not just because it should actually be the best detector, but because I'll finally have a simple answer to that one common question. What's the best detector? Thea. Maybe it will be. Maybe it won't be. We'll see. But hopefully, at least just for my sake, I'm really hopeful that it does it just so I can give you a one-word answer for that. But yeah, right now, I think the R7 is kind of the sweet spot for performance and features and price and that kind of stuff. V1 Gen 2 is great too. Maybe the Max 360. They're all kind of around $450 to $500. Max 360C if you want to do the Wi-Fi stuff too, and the new mount. Let's see, R7 and R3. Yeah, the R3, I kind of feel like, and this is kind of my fault too, it sort of gets forgotten about because there's the R7 and it has more features and stuff. But the R3, I was just playing with it earlier today. Great detector. Like, here, grab one. Is this an R3? Yeah, this thing, I mean, for, what is this thing now? It's less than $300. Great performance, all that kind of stuff. There are some limitations with the K-band frequency scanning range. Okay, let's talk about this. This detector is going to be replaced too. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Uniden R2 and R4. That information is also on the forums now. I haven't done a video on it yet, but yes, there's a new version of this that's going to be coming. Same idea as the R1 and the R3, but just with the wider K-band scanning range, kind of like the R7 has, so it can scan down to what, 23.9-ish or something, but the same idea. So they're going to release the R2 and the R4. Since it's on the forums now, and it has been for a little while, I'll talk about it. But yeah, if you don't need the, is it the R1? I always have to check. No, this is, yeah, so it has kind of the, I prefer this version of the R3 that has the black top. I think it's the Best Buy one, kind of the matte black one. It looks like the R1, but you can see it still says Mark and stuff on the front. So it's the R3. And I always have to double check when I'm looking. I'm looking at the Mark button to tell the difference. But yeah, R2 and R4 are coming. I don't know what they're going to be priced at or when they're going to be released at. They're probably going to be more expensive than the R3 and the R1. So we might wind up in a similar situation with DFR7 and DFR9 if the R1 and R3 stick around at a lower price point. For most people, I'll say just get the R1 and the R3 and save the cash. Yeah, Bailey, easily the best value for a detector today, 100%. The Cannonball video that went up I think it was yesterday, the one with the guy who did it solo in the Ford Mustang, they actually showed he was running an R3 in his. I mean, for people who don't want to spend a ton of money, yeah, get this. And if you're worried you have an R3 now, probably aren't going to need the R4. Most people don't need the wider K-band scanning range in the US. I think it's more for like Canada, or there's a couple places here in the US, I'll give you that. But for most people, R3 is really kind of the sweet spot. So great detector. And I like it. I like the feel of the detector better than the R7. I like the mute button right there on the front. Imagine that. Set it on the side like the R7. It just feels better than the R7. So awesome detector. Yeah, Explore Casper, rags. I run the R3 in one vehicle and the R7 in another. I like both, totally. Kirk, I ran the R3 cross country many times. It's a great setup, totally. Brant Theron, I'm impressed with the R1 for a cheaper detector. The R2 and R4 sounds like a nice change, but my next detector will be Thea. Totally. I think that's kind of where most people are landing at this point, is like just waiting for that detector. And man, I hope that lives up to expectations, because if it doesn't, GT Pro, RSpec. What's up, RSpec? Good to see you here. DFR7 versus 9. get the 7 while it's still available. The 9 has like an auto dimming display and a multicolor screen and stuff, but it's bigger and bulkier. And instead of the DFR9, just spring for the R3. Or if you want a cheaper detector, get the DFR7. So DFR9 is just in a weird spot where I don't think it makes sense to get. Jason, thank you for the super chat donation. Oh, 20 Canadian dollars. That's cool, eh? Let's see. Thanks for all the testing, videos, and honesty. You're welcome. Just a little gas money to help. That's perfect. Yeah, that's literally testing, gas money. If Thea does live up to expectations, how do you think that will do for the direction of your channel if the answer is Thea? That's going to simplify my stuff for sure. Whenever people say what's the best detector, but I know not everybody's going to want to spend whatever it is, $800, $900, $1,000 for a detector. So I think that's still going to sit. It's a great question. As like, if you want the best detector, just go get a Thea. And I know Redenso has mentioned they're going to eventually want to come out with other detectors that also use artificial intelligence, that have their training in machine learning and stuff. So they're going to want to do a custom installed one like the RCM, maybe do a cheaper one that doesn't have arrows to try to get down to the lower price point. With the hardware that they're putting in, they're not going to be able to do like a $100 detector. It's not going to be a cheap detector. But if you want something like a non-arrow version of it, maybe they'll strip out some other features just to save cost. I don't know. But it would make sense for them to try to do a less expensive one, to do a custom installed one. But what they're wanting to do is like make a mark in the industry and say, hey, here's our Halo unit. Here's all the bells and whistles and everything we can throw at it. And boom, here's Thea. And then it's like, here's a custom installed version. Here's a cheaper non-arrow version, but they want to really like make an impression. So that's kind of the idea behind Thea. And if it delivers, I think it's quite likely that it could. I don't want to overhype it or anything. That's why I keep doing a lot of the disclaimers. We'll have to see kind of what happens in testing. Is it actually reliable? Right? So we got to, of course, test it. But from what we've seen with a lot of their development and things that they've been showing us in the lab and whatnot, and things that I've seen from some of the early development stuff, it definitely looks promising. But of course, we really have to test to wait and see. I would love to test one as soon as it's available. Maybe it's before it's available. It would be cool to spend some time doing some testing to see if it lives up to expectations, so that once it's available for pre-order and then for launch, we'll have some information to be like, okay, you guys want to drop the cash potentially for Thea. Can it actually do what they promise? Well, here's the test results. Here's how it compares in terms of blind spot filtering. Here's what it's like using it. Are there any weird issues? Maybe we found some in beta testing, and here's what Redenso did to fix it. That's an important thing too, because I'm not honestly expecting Thea to be perfect. Every detector has issues, just realistically. So how they can do a lot of their fixes in-house. I know that's been an issue for them with trying to get fixes done for the XP or for maybe even more importantly, the Pro M and stuff. They're like, we have something we want to do. Hey, guys who we contract to do it, can you fix it for us? And they don't. And that's a big reason of why they wanted to do it in-house, is because they can make the changes themselves and not be handcuffed by somebody else who just won't do it. So we'll see, of course, how good are they at delivering and how good are they at updating as needed. Any thoughts on the Cobra RAD480i? I haven't tested it myself. It's been on the list, but kind of higher priority stuff. Redline 360C, for example, has just been things I've been working on. That would be cool to test. I'd like to also test, the Cobra Road Scout. That would be a cool one as well. It's on the list. Just a balance of time and stuff. But yeah, I'd like to do it at some point. I just honestly haven't gotten to it. I would actually, that kind of something that bugs me. I wish I could test every single radar detector. I wish I could test every single dash cam, but it's just something that's tough to do realistically, just balancing time and stuff. So I would love to. Don't get me wrong. It's on the list. It's just at some point right now. I usually like testing the better stuff, not the lower end stuff. That's just my personal preference. But I know the cheaper ones, you sell more. If I was into this for the money and stuff, I would spend more time maybe with the stuff that's higher volume or whatever. But I care about quality. That's what I care about. So that's where I spend my time. Let's see. So this is an interesting question. Croson 606. Thea may be perfect, but what happens when radar guns start using AI to defeat Thea? I don't think there's anything about AI, and I could be wrong, but the way AI works, it's not going to magically dance around Thea. Thea can just be trained to detect the signals that are being transmitted out of the antenna. Maybe they can do some stuff on their end to recognize which car is being tracked and stuff, doing frequency modulation, but Thea can already detect that. I don't think there's any, we'll see. Radar guns, are super, super slow when it comes to being updated. Radar detectors update much more often, and it's easy for radar detector to come out with an update. If they want to try to do something like KU detection, or they want to try to do pop or whatever, you can update a detector pretty easily to work around it. So I'm personally not that concerned about it, but if it happens, we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but it's not something that I'm honestly that concerned about. Florida, any updates on the software side for the Redline 360C? Not yet. That would be cool. I'm really hopeful. And that, I think, if they get the arrows, if they get the alert display with the arrows popping up quickly, if they get the ramp up, if they get the overspeed alerts, if they get the full tilt alerts, that kind of stuff actually working properly, I think it could be a great detector. I don't want to write it off too quick. Like, yes, it's annoying to deal with some of the stuff as an early adopter and some of the initial issues. Totally. I don't think they should have happened in the first place, but that's life and this stuff happens. So again, how does a company respond when life happens, right? We'll see. I'm holding on to my detector. I know a lot of you guys have said, like, just return your detector. It sucks. I'm holding on to it because I really want it to be a good detector. Plus, I'm waiting for the update, and I want to let you guys know if the update fixes it. That's kind of what I do here. So, yeah. A Dragon Eye version of the radar gun. It doesn't really work that way. LiDAR and radar operate very differently, so you can't just do, like, I guess you can, well, to be fair, you could do some stuff with frequency modulation and stuff, kind of like what we're seeing with the red flex and all. But Thea is already designed to detect a lot of that kind of stuff. I know some current detectors may struggle against some of the newer stuff that's coming out, and that's actually a big reason of why we're looking at newer gen detectors that can detect the red flex, the multi-radar, the GATSO stuff, things that we're seeing overseas with the Strelka or the Iskra, and just all these different things that do operate differently. Some of the ones that we see in Russia, and I'm just bringing it up because it's on my mind. I learned about this stuff recently. A lot of American detectors don't detect it, but you can have a relatively inexpensive detector that's just designed to detect it, and it will. It's not super hard. I mean, well, okay, I don't want to say it's not super hard, but you can do it without having an expensive detector. I'll just say that. So there are solutions for it. Johnny Vega. Oh, any plans to contact Valentine, Escort, and Redenso and do a live stream? That could be interesting. I mean, Escort is probably focused right now getting the updates out. Valentine, I'm sure they're working on their own stuff too. I know they, what's it called? Are you using the Bowflex or are they just decoration? Yeah, I just put it in the background to pretend how big my guns are. No. Yeah, we just need a spot for it. This is my home gym in the morning. Yeah, we got those recently. We bought them off, I think, Facebook Marketplace from some guy in Seattle. So, yeah, they've been pretty good. They're adjustable for different weights and stuff. They rubber grips. They feel pretty good in the hand. So, yeah. Let's see, Jordan. Vortex, would you highly recommend the M1 dash cam for the Max 360? Honestly, not really. I mean, here, I'll grab it. So it's one of those things where you got to choose what's important to you. So, hi. Mwah. My wife and daughter are out there saying hi. So as we're streaming. So it's a dash cam like this. It connects to the side of the sticky cup like this. And, oh, here, I can just attach it. So your detector clips on. Power cable's in the way. 1 second. Okay, let's connect it. Okay, so connects there, and then this clips on. Okay, great. So there's your M1 dash cam. One, you have kind of like the all-in-one thing. If you want the convenience, this is great, right? So one power cable plugs in there. You've got the pass-through that goes into your detector. One mount, radar detector, dash cam. Cool. It's a little overpriced for what it is. They keep running sales on it, but it's about $200 for a 1080p dash cam. It's got Wi-Fi. The quality's not that great. The feature set's not that great, but if you want a convenient dash cam for an all-in-one package, under $200, you get a 1080p dash cam. For a little over half the price, go get the VFO A119 V3, $120, something like that. Records at 1440p, better video quality, more features. I mean, actually, well, no, it doesn't have Wi-Fi. I'll give it that. It does have GPS, much better video quality. It's got parking mode recording, which this does not have, which kind of makes sense. Your radar detector powers off, right? when you're driving or when you're parked. So this thing turns off too when you're parked. Doesn't do parking recording. You can get better dash cams with better features, more features, better quality for less money. So this is not the bang for the buck option. There's also weird things where if you want to run like the ZR5 or ZW5 wireless laser jammers, you'd have to plug it in here, but then this is going to block communication to the radar detector. So you can't do Escort's laser shifters and the dash cam all in one package, which I think is stupid. I don't know why they didn't just build in that integration, but this will actually prevent Escort laser shifters from working properly. So it's an okay option. I mean, if you want like a rental car package, boom, here you go. Radar detector and dash cam, one power cable, one mount, throw it in a rental car, great. Or even for your own car, you got it all in one package. I'm just not impressed with the video quality, and there's better options for less money. But that's, I guess, kind of Escort's thing is they give you a little bit more convenience, but they're going to charge you more. So, you know, you want a detector with auto lockouts, go get Escort. You want something that's more convenient and all in one, go get an Escort. If you want the best quality and bang for the buck, that's not where you're going to want to go to get an Escort. So I guess it depends on your priorities, you know? So that's the M1. Explore Casper, who would want to run their shifters? There's an option. I run them in my wife's car. She's got the ZW5. She didn't want me running a cable through the firewall. Okay. And I had them sitting in the closet anyway, so I went ahead and installed them. They're there. You know, I still wish they had the auto JTK, so I'm still like having to go back periodically. And if you hear, what do you do? She's like, oh, I double press the mute button, or I've got the smart cord, double press this mute button. So I'm like having to periodically remind her, what do you do when you hear this sound? You know, I really hope Escort just builds in auto JTK like they promised they would. But yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we have what PL3s and TrueSpeed S and stuff. So we'll be able to, it still jams the guns that we have out in use here. And she's got a smaller car, so it is kind of optimized, I guess, for the ZW5 and front only protection, not rear. So it works, but it's not the best option, but it works. So yeah. Let's see. Talking about Arizona stuff, ALP, Virginia. Looking to get some laser jammers, but I need to make some mock-ups of the ALP, TMG, and Stinger options to see what can fit my car without without cutting if possible. That's the thing. Obviously, Stinger is going to be the best for that. Super teeny tiny fiber heads. They're like a little over 2 millimeters diameter. They're crazy tiny, but you have to make sure you can run the cable back and stuff. They'll fit almost everywhere. But yeah, ALPs and TMGs, their head sizes are pretty similar. You may have to cut your grill. You may not. You can always buy a cheap grill on eBay if you're concerned about that. But yeah, that's the thing. Matthew, can you get in touch with Valentine 1 about the MRCD? I mean, I talked to Mike Valentine about that in our interview, and I know he kind of said it was like a science project that maybe they'll get to eventually. I don't think that's their priority right now. They seem to be focused on just things that they experience, you know. I think the V1 Gen 1 had an LNA for X-band. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they had one for X-band, not K&KA or something, because they're in Ohio. Anyway, they're not prioritizing stuff like MRCD, and they're just saying it's a science project. So we'll see if they add it in and stuff. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like a priority for them. Johnny Vega, can you make a video tutorial about the V1 Gen 2 and JBV1? I actually just finished a 3-part video series about JBV1. I'm waiting on E2S2R on RDF. He's working on like a 4-hour-long JBV1 tutorial video series. He's still working on it. Once he finishes it, I want to get a little B-roll just showing his stuff. And my video is going to be like, here's kind of an introduction of getting started and using the app. For more information, go take a look at his tutorials. And I kind of want to wait for his thing to be done so I can link you to it and show you a couple quick demos of it in action and stuff. But my part of it is actually just finished, I think, yesterday, editing it. So I'm literally just waiting for him to finish, and then I'll get the JPV1 tutorial up online for you guys. So yeah, that's available. I've got it ready. I'm just waiting for him, and then it'll be up online for you guys. Cody, how far do you think Thea will pick up instant on or LiDAR as far as reaction time before I get hit? No idea. No clue. And I mean, range, that's always a tough thing. That's a tough. How far away can a radar detector detect radar? There's a lot of ways to answer that question. In ideal situations, it can do up to 8 miles of range, but we don't always face ideal. Okay. On my Red Barn course, maybe you'll get 1 mile of range, but maybe it'll be half a mile. But that's only for that specific course. What about everywhere else that we drive? Okay. The radar detector will give you 8 times the capture distance of a police radar gun. I have no idea what that means, and that also doesn't have anything to do with kill zone distances. That doesn't mean anything. Or it has twice the range of this other detector. The Redline 360C has twice the range of the Redline EX. No, it has twice the sensitivity, which may or may not translate into twice the range. Usually not. Like, there's no good way I know of to answer that question. I wish there was a simple way. With cars, we have like 0 to 60 times. We have quarter mile times. We have good ways of like testing and measuring and comparing, you know? There's not a good way that I know of to do that with radar detectors. We can just say, well, this detector gives you better range. It's going to be more likely to alert to police radar at a distance. But it's tough to like simply and accurately answer that question. I don't know of a good way to do it. So if a detector is more sensitive, cool. We can take a look at a couple tests to see, man, it's going to give you significantly more range. It gives you a little bit more range. Maybe it'll be terrain limited and alert in the same spot as every other detector. There's no simple yet accurate and complete way to answer that question. I wish there was, but there's no good way to do that. And yeah, with laser, I mean, these things are typically at best, they're speeding ticket notifiers. You get shot with laser, the cop gets your speed, these things go off. That's what laser jammers are for. And we can get into the whole discussion of scatter and what if the officer shoots you while you're accelerating, you haven't sped up yet. And yes, there's little exceptions to the rule and stuff like that. But for consistent, reliable, trustworthy protection, laser jammers, or Waze is going to be better than any radar detector for laser protection. Bailey, in testing the DFR9, do you notice if I have a better ramp up than the DFR7? I honestly haven't used it that much. I don't really like that detector that much right now, just the way it's priced. It's kind of a big and bulky detector. Where is it? Boom. And DFR7. I don't know. I mean, just the way it is right now, if I'm going to be running one of them, here's DFR9, here's R3. R3 is smaller, more compact, better performance, better BSM filtering, 3-digit frequency display, MRCD. This thing does have an auto-dimming display, and I think they put the power cable on the right side. They're on different sides here of the detectors, as you can see. So a couple advantages here, but I don't really like this that much. I mean, it's not a bad detector. It's just the R3 and the DFR7 are better for the money. So I just don't spend a ton of time running it. So I can't tell you a lot about the ramp up and stuff, I guess, just because I don't really use it much. I don't like it. So I don't grab it much. But yeah, on sale for $200. DFR7 is $150. So yeah, if you want a cheap detector, I mean, it's not bad. I just think there's better options for the money. So Anthony, is the company that's the maker of the R7 coming out with a new detector anytime soon? They make detectors for a lot of different companies, for K40, for Rocky Mountain Radar, for Redenso, for Uniden. I mean, they make a lot of different detectors, so it'll always be packaged and sold under another name. But yeah, Attawave makes products for a lot of different companies. And yeah, as far as what I know for new detectors that are coming, when the information is available, I will tell you. Push that DFR9 this way and give it a test. Yeah, tests. I mean, I would love to see more testers. Do you need one? Do you have one? I'm always a big proponent of testing. That's, I think, a big thing. It's if you want to test with what you have. I know it's always fun to like, oh, can you send me detectors? Can I get free stuff? Test with what you have, and like, I think if you start showing people like, you're variable wave. Okay, yeah, that's the thing. Okay. So I know that you know how to test. I'm like, okay, if you're good at testing and you can produce good results, if you can share it with people, if you can do it properly, you can get good information, I would be much more willing to send you a detector. And I'm sure companies would be much more willing to send detectors to testers who they know if I send you a product that I make, I know that you're going to do a good job testing and presenting the information. So if you want free products to test and review, if you want people to loan you stuff, just do tests and share it with people, and people are like, oh, cool, yeah, you want something else to throw into the mix? I'm curious to see how my DFR9 tests. So yeah, just shoot me a PM. I'm happy to send you my DFR9. So I should probably go pretty soon. That way I can spend a little more time playing with my daughter before she goes to bed. Bedtime is coming up. So Ben's detecting. You mentioned an R9 a while back. Yeah, I mean, there's some information about, I think like the FCC info is out on the R9. So we'll see what it's like when it comes out. New detectors, there's always some sure stuff in the mix. Nate, will Redenso enable GPS auto lockouts? I think we're all waiting on the patent to expire at this point. So, Springer, what bourbon are you drinking? What is it? Johnny Walker Black Label? I think I'm almost done. Tasty. I like it. Nice and smoky. Not too expensive. It's the 12-year. I want to get the 18-year as well, just because. But yeah. Anyway, I should probably get going. I know we've been hanging out here for about an hour, so I'm just gonna go play with my daughter before she goes to bed. And Johnny Walker Blue is the best. Okay, I'll have to try that one out as well. Thanks for the recommendation. I haven't had that one yet. So anyway, thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. It's been fun hanging out with you, talking radar detectors. And yeah, Wednesday is just live stream, hang out, and chat. So glad you guys are doing well. Well, I hope you guys are doing well, of course. Glad you guys are here chatting. And yeah, we'll hang out another time. So cool. Till the next video. Peace.